Jose Mourinho won titles at Chelsea and Manchester United, then got sacked and pocketed nearly £40 million, more than most managers earn by actually working. Antonio Conte took home the Premier League, got fired, and walked out with £26 million as a farewell. Laurent Blanc won a domestic treble at PSG, lasted just 3 years, and left with €22 million. Graham Potter's Chelsea disaster saw him out in under 7 months, but still £13 million richer. Roberto Mancini was sacked by Manchester City just a year after winning the title, £10 million in the bank for his trouble. In football's strangest payout ritual, these 5 men made more by losing their jobs than winning on the pitch, and that's not even the half of it. How did a system built to reward success end up making failure so lucrative, and why are clubs trapped in this cycle? Let's break down the contract math that turned the manager's sack into a golden ticket. Contracts for elite football managers do not just say what you get paid for winning, they are really about what you get paid for leaving. The magic number is always the same: how much time is left on the deal. If a manager signs for 3 years at £5 million a season and gets the boot after 1 season, the club still owes 2 years' salary. That is £10 million, straight up, for not working. There is no such thing as a regular notice period or a polite handshake. The contract is a locked safe, and the key is getting sacked early. But it does not stop at base pay. Most top managers have a separate stream for image rights. Think of it as a bonus for letting the club use their face on scarves, posters, and endless press conferences. That is another 10 to 20% on top of the salary, and it is guaranteed whether the team is winning or losing. Add that to the running total, a £10 million payout quickly becomes £12 million, just for walking away. Then come the backroom staff. Managers never work alone. They bring coaches, analysts, and assistants, all on contracts tied to the boss. Fire the manager, and the club has to pay off the whole entourage. That is another £1 to £2 million per year, multiplied by however long is left. The final figure? It is not unusual for a single sacking to cost £15 million or more, even before lawyers get involved. Sometimes clubs try to soften the blow with garden leave, paying the manager to stay at home and not take another job until the original contract runs out. But for most, it is a lump sum, negotiated behind closed doors, with lawyers and agents circling like sharks. The formula is so simple you could write it on a napkin: remaining salary plus image rights plus staff equals one very expensive goodbye. For the agents and club lawyers who design these deals, every sacking is just another day at the office and another payday to celebrate. Across England's top clubs, the numbers are enough to make an accountant sweat. Since the Premier League began, the so-called Big Six, Manchester United, Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester City, Arsenal, and Tottenham, have spent a combined £394 million just to show managers the door. That's not transfer fees or wages for players. That's just the price of saying goodbye. On the surface, it sounds mad. Why would any club treat a multi-million-pound payout as a sensible move? The answer is simple, and it's spelled out in every chairman's risk calculations: Champions League money. One spot in Europe's elite competition is worth at least £40 million. And for clubs that reach the latter stages, the jackpot can soar past £150 million in a single season. When the difference between 4th and 5th place is a windfall that can fund a new stadium, suddenly a £15 million severance package starts to look like a rounding error. So the logic goes like this: if the manager is wobbling and the season is on the brink, the board starts doing the math. Fire now, pay out, and maybe, just maybe, bring in someone who can rescue a top 4 finish. It's a high-stakes bet, but the potential reward dwarfs the cost. The numbers say it all. Manchester United, for example, have spent nearly £100 million on sacking managers since Sir Alex Ferguson retired, all in the hope of recapturing that Champions League golden ticket. But it's not just the money. Owners feel the heat from every direction. Fans chanting for change, pundits demanding action, sponsors getting twitchy. The pressure cooker never lets up. When the stadium starts to turn, the boardroom panic button is never far away. And every time it's pressed, another check gets written, another manager gets rich, and the cycle rolls on. If you think it sounds extreme, wait until you see what happens at Chelsea. Chelsea have turned sacking managers into an art form, and a very expensive one at that. Since 1992, the club has dismissed 18 managers, more than any other team in the Premier League's so-called Big Six. The running tab was £156 million paid out just to get rid of coaches and their staff. That is not a typo. It works out to an average of £9 million every time the owner gets cold feet. Under Roman Abramovich, firing the manager became almost a seasonal ritual. Win a double, win the Champions League, get sacked anyway. Carlo Ancelotti, Roberto Di Matteo, Jose Mourinho, no one was safe, and the checkbook always came out. Then came Todd Bailey, who decided the only thing better than sacking one manager was sacking 3 in under 3 years. Between Thomas Tuchel, Graham Potter, and Mauricio Pochettino, Chelsea shelled out about £36 million in severance before most fans had even memorized the new lineups. By comparison, Manchester United, a club not exactly famous for patience, averages £10.3 million per sacking since Sir Alex Ferguson left. That is still less than Chelsea's total spree. In the world of football, Chelsea are not just trendsetters on the pitch, they are the blueprint for how to make firing managers a business model. Clubs have tried just about every trick in the book to stop the bleeding. The go-to move these days is the underperformance clause. On paper, it sounds clever. If a manager flops, finishes outside the top 6, misses Europe, or gets stuck in a relegation scrap, the payout shrinks or even vanishes. But here's the catch. The top agents see these clauses coming a mile off. They haggle, water them down, or negotiate them out entirely. For every ironclad clause a club sneaks in, there is a lawyer or agent ready to poke holes until it is barely worth the ink. Financial fair play rules were supposed to add discipline too. Severance payments count against a club's spending cap, nudging accountants to think twice before reaching for the eject button. In reality, clubs just shuffle the numbers, hide payouts in different line items, or accept the hit and hope the next manager brings a Champions League windfall to balance the books. When things really get messy, there is always the manager's arbitration tribunal, a sort of football court for contract disputes. But almost nobody uses it. Clubs and managers would rather settle quietly, cut a check, and keep the details secret. So, for all the talk of reform, the cycle rolls on. The only real winners are the managers and their agents, who keep cashing in no matter how many safeguards clubs try to build. The numbers across the league tell the story better than any single sacking ever could. The average Premier League manager now lasts less than 2 years in the job, barely enough time to finish redecorating the office. Since the mid-1990s, English football has shelled out over £420 million just to pay people not to work. That is not a typo. Hundreds of millions gone in golden goodbyes. Meanwhile, the supposed fix, sack the manager and spark a turnaround, rarely works. Most studies show little to no long-term improvement after a mid-season change. Clubs keep firing, hoping for a miracle, and instead, just hand another briefcase of cash to the next man out the door. The only people who seem to win every time are the managers and their agents, who have turned getting sacked into the most reliable payday in football. The clubs are stuck in a cycle they cannot seem to break, paying more for each new roll of the dice. So here we are, Mourinho, Conte, Blank, Potter, Mancini, each richer for being sacked than for winning. Premier League clubs have shelled out over £420 million just to say goodbye. The real winners aren't on the pitch, they're at the negotiation table. Football's wildest money game shows no sign of ending.